Welcome back to another episode of NewOrleans.Football presented by PJ's Coffee. Coming to you from the home studio. But if you're in the market for a new car, make sure you check out my guy, Matt Bowers, at one of his many locations. He'll get you the best care, the best customer prices, the best car buying experience that you can find. So if you're in the market for a new car, make sure you go and check him out. All right, B, what do we got?
We have our first topic presented by Shawbear Insurance, the Earhart Agency. If you look up Shawbear Insurance, make sure you look up the Earhart Agency. They'll get you the best deal and the best prices. Which player's success can make or break this season? I know we've talked about the quarterbacks a lot. I know we talked about some defensive players, but pinpointing it down to just one person whose success can make or break the Saints this season.
One person, I think it's probably Kelvin Banks is probably the guy that I would put at the top of that list. He has to come through. He has to play well. They have to have a future there. They have to know that they got anchor points for their team. It's not even just like making or breaking the 2025 season. I feel like it's like making or breaking the future of the team.
Yeah.
And I think he's got to be better than Fuaga. Like I don't even think that's a high enough bar. I think you got to exceed it and at least be on a path toward it. Maybe you don't have to exceed it today, but I think you got to be arguably the best player on that offense. Like he's going to be one of the highest drafted players on that side of the ball, and they're building everything around that. Like having the line, having that put together.
Yeah.
It's number one when Kellen Moore talks about team building and how to succeed in the NFL and what you need to do. Like he always starts with the line, and if that's what you're looking to do, you have to hit on that pick. So that's putting a lot on a young guy, but I think I look beyond this season even, and I think that it's everything is kind of riding on him being the guy.
Yeah, offensively, definitely he is that person. And just to, kind of provide another name on there, I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm kind of torn between two people, but having to narrow it down to one, I'll have to ride with Chase Young because of the investment that you put in him and the age on how he can kind of carry into this future segment. Because like you said with Calvin Banks, not only just him hitting this year, him hitting as a pick overall is extremely important. And I think with Chase Young, the investment that you put in, how his age, even though he's been in the league for a while, he's still fairly young. So I think him hitting is very important just for the defensive side of the ball to have an identity moving forward and have a piece on there that you can say, all right, this is a highlight piece. This is somebody who, when you come in every week, you got a game plan kind of around him because he's that much of a threat. I think he has to come up in that sense too. But the other person that I kind of was on the fence with was Alontae Taylor, kind of for some of these same reasons, but that's contingent on the extension that the Saints give him. If the Saints give him a large extension, then yes, that is now the pressure point player on the defense because of the amount of money he gets. But if they configure that somehow differently, or if they let him explore and move on, then of course that will change. But Chase Young will have to be the choice for me on the defensive side of the ball. But Calvin Banks, you can't go wrong with that because of the amount of investment, like you said, that this new regime has put into him. He was the first pick of this new head coach, and you're building everything around them.
I don't disagree with any of those. I would say that Alante is probably a pressure point player regardless. Like they need those corners to
Yeah.
play well. So even with or without the money, I think just in general, 2025 success is very contingent on him and Kool-Aid. And I think Chase is a very strong pick for this exercise. Spinning that out a little bit though,
Mhm.
I feel like him being in a position where he can be selected as that, and like the investment being part of the conversation and all that stuff. I feel like that's part of the problem with the defense is that he carries that weight. I don't think he's a guy that should be looked at as the foundational piece. Maybe he's a finishing piece, just given what he's been throughout his career. Like he might elevate into being that type of player at some point. A lot of people have been waiting for it for a long time, since 2020. Is it ever going to happen? I don't know. He does still remain young. Potential still remains there. He's the type of player that I'm okay with investing in, but I don't feel like he should be your best defensive end. And if you are saying he has to do X and Y for your team to achieve Z, I feel like there's something a little bit janky with your build. And look, that's why the Saints are kind of where they're at right now.
I know the Saints didn't pick him, but you kind of said it of him evolving into that. I don't know if that timetable kind of still exists in my eyes for him to evolve into the shoes that he's been put into being the second overall pick.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know either. I mean, it's kind of starting to reach that make or break point, and
Yeah.
maybe it's already past, and I'm not trying to be negative or anything. I
No.
still think he can be a viable contributor on your team, but is there the reality where 7.5 sacks becomes 15? And I don't know that I personally see it, but do I think it could exist within him? I do. I do think he has that ability and that talent. And I do think that there's probably been some negative circumstances. And I do think that,
Yeah,
he
of
had the
course.
health thing and Washington was a bad place to play and all this stuff. But at a certain point, you get into an atmosphere and it has to work. And I think if very quickly here, I think we're coming up on that, like he just is what he is point. And that would be okay. I'm okay with him being what he is. I will even give him a pass on last year if everything the players were, and not that he needs a pass, but just a pass on not being 12 sack, 13 sack guy, whatever. Like if the players are right about Todd Grantham and the system was kind of starting to fall apart and it was a toxic atmosphere and all this stuff, sure, maybe it is on the other side of that. But we got to see it now. Like everything's going to kind of be set up. I don't think it's a great situation still. I don't think there's a ton of talent around you. Secondary might not be great. You don't have other, anyone. There's some solid players on the line, but it
Yeah.
isn't. It isn't like, well, this guy's on the field, so he's going to get chase easier looks, and like that isn't the thing here. That doesn't really exist. I think him and Carl are very good players to have on a team, but I don't know that anyone's necessarily changing their game plan for Brzee or Carl or Godshot to where it sets up, so it's just kind of if it's gonna happen for you, it has to happen. I don't know that I see it, but I agree with the pick. I think if he does achieve that, that's a guy that changes your narrative. And I think that you got probably pinpointed maybe the guy, like the pressure point guy on the team, but I just don't like the fact that he can be in that position. I think it says like, wow, like there's a lot on this like
Right.
very, very big maybe that
Yeah.
historically is trended toward not achieving like that superstar type upside.
So how do you remedy that situation? Do you cut the cord early whenever you find out that the defense maybe is not working, how it's kind of drawn up and planned to be working throughout the season, like make some major moves at the trade deadline? Do you wait until the next draft to try to do that? But then at that same time, if quarterback doesn't work out, then you have to reinvest heavily into that. How does that work?
Well, I think that's that's where the team. I mean, those are the big questions for the whole entire
Yeah.
team. You can't really cut the cord because like what are you cutting it to? And you can't walk away from guys you just signed. There's too much money invested, so you can't really walk away from the mess and start over cleanly. At some point, that probably happens on its own, but
Hmm.
there's no easy like I don't think you go crazy at the trade deadline unless your team's looking like a playoff team and
Right.
if
I
your
don't.
defense is looking janky, like you probably aren't looking like a playoff team. So
Yeah.
that probably isn't an answer right there. If your quarterback stinks, you aren't fixing the defensive end spots, possibly corner, possibly wide receiver, possibly quarterback. So you need the quarterback to hit to really have like to just be able to keep going forward in this rebuild. If the quarterback hits, maybe some of your wide receiver things take care of themselves. So then maybe you are in a position to look at edge rusher, depending on where you finish like in the season. Like we're assuming like a negative record here, like somewhere lower in the league to where you can strike at that. But I mean, that's the problem. And look, this has been the problem for them going back to 17, though, trying to find this other guy.
Yeah.
It's a very hard position to address with like a very long-term answer if you aren't in that category of being a bad team where you can just go get one and they're set because they don't hit the market. They did have the answer with Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, they missed it. Like that's the big one. But even outside of that, though, like out of things that they thought were gonna like, because you got lucky on Trey, a third round pick that hits, like that's just
Mhm.
pure luck. So that kind of illustrates the point even further. Like you have to get lucky and you have to be smart enough to recognize it. Most people would probably recognize it. They didn't. Probably the biggest misstep in recent franchise history outside of just completely wasting 14, 15, 16. But like once they got back on track, that's obviously the biggest mistake they made was Trey. It's not Zach Bond. Zach Bond can win all these accolades. The positional value at defensive end is insane, and you missed, and you can't find another answer for
Yeah.
it. You can go get a Demario Davis. Like those guys hit the market sometimes, and you put them in the right spot and they thrive. So like trying to find that defensive end, it's about as hard as anything this side of getting a quarterback. Quarterback's in a whole different stratosphere. Quarterbacks 1, 2, 3 on the list. Maybe the top 10 hardest things to do in the NFL. Like if you're ranking them out, like there's a huge gap, but it's a tough thing to answer. Like getting that guy, and when you're not drafting at the top of the order, it becomes extremely difficult. So if you're still looking for the quarterback, like, and you need those ends, like it's tough. It's gonna be hard to do both things in a timely fashion. And man, if you answered that quarterback thing, it's a lot easier to draft something that hits. Again, granted, it's still hard. We're talking about a guy that was taken second overall that hasn't met his potential, so it's not always a sure thing. And Jeff Ireland drafted the guy in Miami the one year that he traded up for that didn't hit. I think that was the Mark Ingram draft. Like that, that Deion Jordan. Like there's guys that miss high up in the NFL draft at that position. It's not a sure thing at all, but it's a lot easier to answer that question when you're in a position to strike and you aren't gambling and you aren't taking these swings. And it's not, we're gonna take a small school guy, gonna take another one, gonna take Foskey, it's hard. I mean, and look, people do get lucky at those other spots. I'm not saying it's like the quarterback path, but it's hard. It's hard to answer those questions. And when you're drafting a pass rusher at 20, it's very much not someone that you're like, man, I think this is a sure thing. Obviously, at 2, it's not either, but it's easier to answer those questions up high in the draft.
So it's even like a two-phase rebuild, and you can't start phase 2 unless phase 1 hits, because now you have to go back and do it again. And that's kind of what it is. Is it at 2 different levels of a rebuild? Like the offensive rebuild clearly had to take place if you wanted it or not because of the Derek Carr situation. But with the defense, they reinvested in a lot of those pieces. And Chase Young is younger. He's not the youngest. He's not kind of in that old territory. But when did they have to bite the bullet on that?
So I mean, look, the multiple step rebuild. I mean, that it goes back to the very first. It goes back to Banks. If Banks doesn't hit, like now you're at another top 10 position. If Shuck doesn't hit, you're at a top 10 position that you need to address. If N doesn't hit, you're looking in the top 10. Wide receiver, something you I think can address a little bit later, but that's quickly becoming a highly, like a very high positional value position. Cornerback, I think if you're looking for, hey, this is going to be like a guy that can be our defensive identity, usually that's very high in that draft order. So I mean, it's tough. And then look, if you're drafting top 10 and you don't have the answer at quarterback, and like there's all these things, like you got 2 or 3 of those things you got to address. And then let's say you're picking 9th and Ed Reed 2 sitting there, Caleb Downs. Now, like you can't draft him because you have to address one of these other positions.
Yeah.
It just becomes a very difficult thing to put together when you're missing on these picks. And I don't know about like as it pertains to Chase Young. It becomes clear, I think, like either he's your like franchise level pass rusher at the end of the season or he's not, and it's a need. And that's something that you weigh if you're drafting early. Even if he does hit. I mean, if one of these guys that you want to take, the Clemson edge rusher, like if he's sitting there, and even if let's say Chase Young has 12 and you're drafting top 5, I mean, that's something that man, 2 of them is better. You can't have enough. Like, so it's something that's on the table no matter what. But I think where you don't want it to exist at the end of this, like ideally you would like to have the flexibility of like the quarterback's answered, the left tackle's answered, and you feel solid enough about defensive end that you aren't drafting the 13th guy on your board at 7 because like you just have this need. And let's say, again, looking at like Caleb Downs, he might be number 1 on your board, but because of positional value, teams might very likely pass on him. And let's say you are drafting 6 or 7. Now he's sitting there and you got your guy that's number 1 versus your guy that's number 13. You don't want to have to take 13 because you don't have an answer at one of these other spots. And it's like, okay, we're cool with Sanker. We're okay with Reed. Can get a free safety with pick 37, pick 38, whatever, however that math works. Like you don't want to be sitting in that position where you're making that type of decision. So hopefully, like a lot of these things do hit. Hopefully, the guy you listed here hits. Hopefully the guy I listed here hits for them. And like they're in a decent spot in the draft next year.
And that same ending that you said will take us into our next topic presented by Hard High Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. Make sure you check out the Chilton County Peach. Same smooth flavor, same hard high kick. Let's go into this. Which position group needs to hit and make the biggest leap this season coming up?
It's all of them. It's like all of them really.
Yeah.
Probably for the long-term health of the team. I mean, there's 2 picks. I'll go with one and I'll leave the other one. And you already hit on it a little bit. I mean, I do think it is the cornerbacks. Like those are the ones that really have to hit. Just take that off the board. Be good. Have those guys. Have your second round picks be good, and feel like you're kind of set there. And maybe you just go and you sign a vet next year in free agency. You extend Alante, and all that's taken care of. It's off the board. You feel good about it. Life is good. I think that one has to be one that just kind of is just. It just can't be on the menu of things that are needed right now.
Yeah, and I think offensive line also needs
That's the other
to
one.
has to be a guaranteed hit going into just with the amount of investment that you've put in there. They can't be bad. They can't be bad because if they're bad, then that sets everything back so far. And really, yeah, it's hinging on Banks and Fuaga, but also some of these not really Penning. I don't really put that much pressure on Penning to have to hit to this point because we've kind of seen the ebbs and flows of that already. And there's another player on the team, possibly. We'll see when the pass come on, who can come in and fill in and kind of remedy that position. But I definitely think offensive line, no more needs to be said about it. They've been addressing it in the draft over the last 6+ years. So I definitely think offensive line is there.
Hey, look, Penning would be cool. A cool hit though. Like if you get him and he hits and he's playing
it's great.
well, mid-level type guard contract. You extend him. He's a young player. You know who he is. You know what you're getting instead of trying to be out here chasing the the Lucas Patricks and the Raidenses and whatever. If you can kind of invest in a young player and just have that answered for a while and he doesn't break the bank, that's a nice outcome there, and it kind of salvages a little bit of something. You already lost on the pick, but. That's where you want it. You want to spend your money on your own guys. That's how you want to build your team. You don't want to have to go out and constantly be looking for people. So that would be a good one. I would add the disclaimer here that I think we're probably picking positions that we feel like have realistic upside too, where it's like this can hit and be something for the team. Because like D line is a candidate on this, but I didn't put it on there because I just don't see it being like hitting in that way, but that one's probably as equally as important as the 2 we put here. O-line was the other one that I was thinking of though.
Yeah, but even in that same, and like you said to start off the topic, you can put everybody on here because it just has to go like that. Because even with running back, let's say AK, I mean, I don't think he'll take a step back unless if it involves injury. Now you have to see who else is in the stable, who else can perform, and if the answer is nobody, then you're in a bad situation. So yeah, across the board, you got to fit everybody in. But you said D-line, that's just one of the biggest question marks going into the season. What will they be? How will they perform consistently? What would they look like under Brandon Staley and everything like that? It's just a lot of question marks on this team. But you started it off saying the secondary, has to hit. And I'm really just trying to go through the scenario, even if the Saints aren't able to acquire Asante Samuel, and if he's not the same on when he was in LA, kind of, do you have the pieces already to try to make something happen?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. We're going to hit a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll have more show. Keep it locked to NewOrleans.Football.
Rouse's Markets is voted best grocery store in New Orleans, best grocery store in Baton Rouge, Mississippi, Gulf Coast, Thibodaux, Houma, Hammond, Lake Charles, Mobile, year after year. Thank you for choosing us best grocery store on the Gulf Coast. Number 1. Thank you.
Thank you.
The number 1 grocery store
In Mississippi, Alabama,
Louisiana. 1 million customers a week can't be wrong. Welcome to Rouse's.
The NewOrleans.Football show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee. PJ's Coffee has some of the best drinks that you can find. They have locations all over the city. They have pastries and everything else you need to get your day started. So go check them out. Looking for the best insurance coverage at the lowest price? Look no further than Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency. They are a local independent insurance agency right here in New Orleans, specializing in home, flood, and auto insurance. At Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, their dedicated team will shop every available carrier in the market, ensuring you get the most comprehensive coverage at the lowest possible price. Why settle for less when you can have the best? Trust Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, to protect what matters most to you. I do. I've been a client of theirs since 2021. Call them today at 504-326-6526 or visit them online at Protected by Chabert. That's 504-326-6526. Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, your local insurance experts. Hardhide flavored whiskey, Ponchatoula strawberry, and Chilton County peaches in your favorite bars, stores, and restaurants. Hardhide Chilton County Peach Whiskey is a blend of aged wheat whiskey, light American whiskey, and fresh Chilton County peaches from Alabama's Durbin Family Farms. And Hardhide Strawberry Whiskey tells the story of a small town famous for strawberry farming. A delicious natural strawberry-infused 86 proof whiskey for whiskey lovers. Just look for the red and orange bottles in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants.
Welcome back for more NewOrleans.Football. It is now time for our next segment presented by Bobby Hebert's Cajun Cannon Restaurant. Nick, there's a guy in the sports journalism world who, I mean, has been on a crazy run right now. I'm talking like before Game 7, Halliburton, prayers up to him. Hopefully he recovers stronger and better. But that playoff run that he had of constantly hitting game winners and taking himself out of situations, that's what this dude is in the sports journalism world. Pablo Torre. He has this show on YouTube called Pablo Torre Finds Out. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you check it out. They released an episode recently between him and Mike Florio, who, you know, everybody kind of knows who Mike Florio is. I just found out yesterday that he was a lawyer in another life. Didn't know that. But they investigated kind of maybe a collusion case that the NFL owners have.
That's crazy. You didn't know Florio, but like he's been doing this since probably your whole life. Like,
yeah,
so
they said
yeah,
a quarter century. I'm a quarter century old, so yeah.
Yeah, that's like the generation about, like, that's just part of the story. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. He's been an NFL reporter your whole entire life. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so they kind of uncovered this alleged possible, let's just put quotes around this whole thing, just because, you know, collusion case between the NFL and really just watching it. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you check it out because it's very, very interesting. And it encompasses the whole league. But you've been covering the league for a long time. You're in the know. You covered maybe one of the most well-known scandals in the NFL recently, in recent history, when you were in New England. So does collusion exist in the NFL? And if so, how have the Saints been hurt or benefited from it?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, shout out to Pablo and Florio for getting this document and putting it out there. It's kind of crazy to see how all this stuff goes together. I had a Pablo this morning. Like, I told him he's an alien. Like, he's like every other week, it seems like he's dropping a story that is just making like the world stop. Like he's doing like real journalism. And some of it doesn't feel like it's weighty, like getting the New York Knicks pitch video to LeBron James. But like that shit is hard to get, man. Like like the journalism chops that it takes to go get the stuff. And me as a sports fan, I care about that. Like, that is an important story to me. Figuring out that LeBron James probably wasn't at the Kobe thing, that's an important story to me. Like, it just... It's people lying and seeing how stuff works. And then he's like he's did the whole Belichick thing. Man, I devoured every episode. I'm interested in it. Like, it's in the journalism that he's doing on this stuff is crazy. Like, on the Belichick story, he went through and like looked at fan cams and found pictures of her in the stands at these like he is putting in insane work. And like, I think it deserves to be applauded. Like, he's killing everybody in the industry right now, no question about it. This story, like, and look, he's like, some of the stories are like crazy and incredibly, they aren't all like, and this is one that's incredibly important. And like, the arbitrator ruled in favor of the league owners. So like, it is what it is, but just to kind of see how everything is laid out, the pieces of the puzzle, and go watch the episode. I'm not trying to like take views away or listens away from them or whatever, but basically they got a document that just basically shows how from there's a meeting with the league owners where Goodell and all them like suggest the talking points on a PowerPoint that the NFL Management Council put together. They're in a room, they're talking about it. It pertains to the Deshaun Watson thing. They don't want guaranteed contracts to become the norm. And basically it progresses on through Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. And there was another one, Justin Herbert, like the Chargers
Russell
owner.
Wilson,
Russell Wilson. What was the other one? And they got the Chargers owner talking to the Arizona owner, and the Chargers owner saying, hey, you guys not giving this guaranteed money is going to help us in our negotiation. Like, there is a lot of stuff here where it seems like very clear. The Broncos owner messaging the other people in his group saying, hey, look, I think the league is going to be happy about how we handled this contract. We'll get it done. that's not one team operating as a single entity. That's a team operating as if they're part of a collective. And
Yeah.
I mean, they got these like messages and emails and stuff, and it seems very clear to me that, look, it isn't a surprise. Like we kind of know
No,
how this
not at
stuff
all.
goes on. Like, but to see it laid out and just like so brazenly is like eye popping, and just like, man, like if they're talking like this on a text, you know,
Who
if
knows what this type of person? Yeah.
you're really comfortable if you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing in writing. Like, I think most people even know if like, man, I'm about to like make a comment here that I don't know that I would want anyone else to see. Like you picking up the phone and calling someone, or and if you're even smarter, you're doing, a
Face to
FaceTime
face.
audio.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's just kind of how a lot of people do things, and they you get the point of brazenness where you're putting it in the writing. To me, that's crazy. But look, I feel like this Tyler Shuck thing right now is an example of kind of how things play out in the league, and people are aware of the precedent of everything else, setting a precedent for everything else, and then even just setting a precedent for themselves in a prior negotiation to where it's just, and then you add in other teams into that doing the same thing to make sure that your precedent doesn't mess up their precedent. And if they're
Yeah.
talking about it, it's one thing to be aware about it. It's another thing to collude and make sure that it sets up that way where it's like, you're egging on the guy before you. But like going to the Shuck thing, that's why I kind of like, I was just like, man, this is crazy. Like, why are they putting this pressure on him to fold? And why is this story out there? Who's the person trying to create pressure on Chuck to fold in this? And it's the people before him that, to me, that would seem to be the people that would want him to fold. So it makes it so that it takes the bottom out for everybody else. So now the people right before him don't have that. Like, so it kind of, everything is set up in that way. But to want Tyler Shuck to fold is crazy to me. Like, why would he? Why would he be the one to try to do that? And where is this pressure coming from? Like, it just always makes you, that as a reporter, that's always how I look at it. I'm like, well, why are they coming at 40? Like, am I missing something here? And to me, it's just like, well, you want 40 to fold, so 39, 38, 37.
Yeah.
It takes out their legs a little bit.
You want somebody to be a sacrificial lamb. Yeah.
And in no way am I suggesting that this is like an orchestrated thing on Tyler Shuck or something. Like, I'm just saying, like, it just always, the precedent is always there for the other thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, man, there's so much in that story to take and then run off with, because it just is an incredible just amount of journalism that went into it. But one thing that kind of stuck out to me is even the catalyst that started this entire case about Deshaun Watson getting paid that guaranteed money. There was a time and place where the Saints were in the running to get Deshaun Watson. And because that amount of money that never, ever was on the table before, guaranteed, that the Cleveland Browns came with, it just made it where, all right, I'm out. I can't deal with this. You know what I mean? And luckily enough, because of what he's shown on the field the last couple of years, you dodged a major bullet.
Look, I would go so far as to say that it wasn't just like in the running. I think they were likely, I think they were leading the race at one point. I mean, they restructured all the money. They got the money ready to do it. Gail Benson flew up there twice to meet with him. I don't think it was just likely. I think that race was running them in Atlanta. I think the Saints' actions, to me, I'm just, piecing together A, B, and C happened.
Mm-hmm.
To me, their actions told me they thought they were leading this thing. And then I think the Browns came in and had to make this wild offer to win it. And it was just like, well, we can't say no to that. I think that's how that happened. But yeah, look, the Kyler thing was so nasty to me too. I mean, I've steadfastly like pushed against the idea that and I think people like denigrate his talent and talk about him in a certain way because of how things came out before his contract happened with all the video game stuff, not studying all this stuff. I always thought that was like some of the most underhanded, dirty stuff. And I think people talk about him like through that prism to this day, knowingly or unknowingly, that it's just kind of in their head where they're just like, oh, this guy, like, he's not serious. He's not. And before that, it was like, hey, this is one of the young rising stars in the league. And I still think he's a very, very good quarterback. But I think people denigrate him a little bit because of the way that got talked about. And I think it was part of the negotiation tactic to kind of like lower his perceived value, to try to get stuff done. I really do think it was part of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, and even with I think the biggest. I don't know how it wasn't that big of a story, but even with Lamar Jackson, when he was available and just teams were just uninterested and he landed back in Baltimore, I think that's such a wild thing because people needed quarterback. They brought up the Falcons and Desmond Ritter. Desmond Ritter isn't even in the league right now. So to not go after an MVP and continuously, I mean, he won it again. To not go after that because of steadfast with the precedent that, okay, we're not going to buckle and just give out all of this guaranteed money is kind of wild. But even
Well,
talking,
look, I think part of that, like, too, like, just spinning out on that one a little bit. I think there's two things, and it's always, hey, look, like they were using it as a negotiation tactic, obviously. Like if someone comes in, they're gonna match off or whatever. And I think there's a piece of like I don't want to be part of this because like if I get involved in this now, like I've lost out, and it's not something I'm going to go after this quarterback and I'm not going to be able to get him. And now I got a quarterback on my team and I got these fans and all that stuff.
yeah,
But there's also the other side of it where, me being a person that owns a business, if I can do something to make my competition spend more money in a way that I think is going to allow me
yeah.
to grant a larger piece of the market share, boy, I don't know. Maybe I'm doing that. And guess what? Like if I got to pay Lamar Jackson because they're like, you know what, take him. Okay, like now I got Lamar Jackson. So yeah, I mean that one was always I was always surprised someone didn't just step up just to screw him. But these documents, even though it was rolled in a way that shows, that shows is the wrong word, but it was rolled that there wasn't collusion, to me makes it seem like there's at least a little bit of like something here. And look, people can always just choose to take a more passive approach in some things to where like I'm not gonna do this because it's gonna, maybe it comes back on me. I don't want to like make it harder for myself to do future business by doing this. So like I'm just gonna sit it out. I think that's a very logical way to look at things sometimes. And it doesn't have to be a colluded thing. It doesn't have to be an organization with other people. Sometimes people are just like, I'm not gonna do aggressive business because I want to be able to do it this way. And that works for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that operate that way, and it's great and it's fruitful and they get very rich and all this stuff. But in a competitive atmosphere, it's surprising that 1 of 32 doesn't.
Yeah. No, for sure. Have you ever heard a team say, "Oh, we're out. We're not even, taking a look at this guy. We're not in this race." Have you ever heard them put out like a statement saying that?
That was very weird. The way that whole thing played out. Yeah, like, hey, look, we're not part of this. And then it's like, well,
Yeah.
why are you saying it publicly? Because like now you're just doing that to cut that's where it looks nuts. Like that's where
Yeah.
it looks like, what is happening here? Why is this happening? Like that should not be part of it unless there's a loud story out there saying, oh, they're trying to get them, or if somebody's lying and throwing my name in there and being like, oh, this team's trying to sign this player, and I hey, look, you aren't going to use me for this. Like, no, don't pull me. I can see that, but it was very weird
Yeah.
how that was kind of happening that year. Yeah, I remember one time like Belichick claimed like it used to be a thing where it was kind of like a gentleman's agreement where if you waived an injured player at the end of camp, like other people wouldn't claim him off waivers and you could just kind of stash him on your IR or whatever. And I
Mhm.
can't remember who it was, but it was like 2010, 2011. Like I think it was the Bills. The Bills waived someone to get him through to and they were gonna put him on IR or whatever. Like either you used to have to carry him and do it after you could do it, but like there was kind of like this gentleman's agreement to where, hey, look, nobody's gonna touch someone's player, and they waived someone, and Belichick claimed them. And I remember that was like a huge thing, and it was just like, oh, like there's a code or whatever.
Yeah.
That kind of got cooked, but yeah, I mean, I think there's just like a lot of these little things where people try to do like, I don't know if it's collusion or if it's just they aren't stepping on toes or whatever, but someone's got to step on some toes when the MVP of the league is available,
Yeah, no, for sure. And even this had me thinking,
even if he isn't really available,
right.
just to make it more
But just to
expensive.
try
Yeah.
to make it happen. No.
But
And
then
this,
there's the backside to that where you get into this again. Like if you make Lamar Jackson more expensive, now you're making your own quarterback more expensive.
and then down the line, everybody else is going to be way more
Yeah.
expensive. But somebody's going to get paid that doesn't need to get paid. And even with the Russell Wilson thing, I mean, I don't know if he just didn't know who he was at that point. You know what I mean? There was that point when Russell Wilson was in Denver, and it just was like, all right, what is it, Mr. Unlimited and all that. He was buying his own hype, but the money that he asked for to the position that he was in his life right there, I don't know if that was kind of right for him, but they threw water on that quickly. And then even when Sean Payton came in there, he was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing this," and he ended up in Pittsburgh, and now he's in New York. But this even has me like thinking and kind of showing that there's the game on the field, but then there's the game that's inside of the different buildings. There's the games that goes on at these meetings and different things like that. Because I mean, man, just seeing it all wide open and seeing it as these people that, don't like each other in terms of their teams playing against each other from a rivalry standpoint, collectively, I mean, they're looking out for each other's best interest just through the receipts that they've left on the ground for Florio and Torre to pick up and kind of show.
Yep.
No, it's wild, man. It's wild. I like that kind of stuff, that kind of deep dive stuff about the behind the curtain. You know what I mean? It's really cool to see. So if you haven't, make sure you check out Pablo Torre Finds Out. That video is, I mean, I don't think enough people were talking about it just because the implications that it has on the league as a whole. But we're going to hit another break, and then when we come back, we'll have more show. Keep it locked to NewOrleans.Football.
I got hurt in a car wreck. Why should I get Gordon?
Because when you're hurt, you need money. And I fight for the people of Southeast Louisiana every day. I got a client who injured their neck in a car wreck, $250,000. Another client was hit by a big truck and needed back surgery. I got them $700,000, and they deserved every single penny.
That's what I'm talking about. Why wouldn't I get Gordon?
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, just call me, New Orleans. Get it done.
Call 504-800-8888.
If you're hungry and just want something that actually delivers on flavor, this is it. Bobby Hebert's Cajun Cannon Restaurant just dropped some new menu items, and they're legit. The Philly cheesesteak po' boy is loaded up right, and the Philly pasta brings the same flavor, but in a new way. And don't skip the fried green tomatoes. Crispy, and that crawfish sauce is no joke. Open every day, delivering late. Bobby Hebert's Cajun Cannon Restaurant. Delicious food, superior service. Attention Saints fans, don't let pests and termites invade your home field. Trust the team at Red Pest Solutions to tackle those unwelcome visitors. Call the Red Man today for unbeatable pest and termite control. Score peace with no pest. Visit redpest.com, REDDPEST.com.
Welcome to the Queen Casino, the crown jewel of entertainment destinations. From the thrill of gaming, where every spin and deal brings you closer to fortune, to the excitement of sports betting, where you can feel the rush of victory. Our spaces and catering menu are perfect for any event. From business meetings to grand celebrations, immerse yourself in our vibrant atmosphere with live music that keeps the party going all night long. Join us at the Queen Casino. Your royal adventure awaits.
Welcome back for more NewOrleans.Football. It is now time for our Get Gordon question of the day, presented by Gordon McKernan Injury Attorneys. Today's question is, would you rather spend money on Alontae Taylor, Rashid Shaheed, and Chris Olave, or new guys like Keenan Allen or Asante Samuel Jr.?
Oh, easily the first trio. I'd rather spend on the young guys that have been here forever, that you know, the Carfax only has your name on it. You know everything that's ever happened with it. Like, yeah. And those other guys are, Asante isn't old, but he's got a neck injury, I think it is, that he had surgery on, and then Keenan Allen's an older guy. So I'd rather invest in keeping your own if it's financially feasible and the prices aren't crazy. But yeah, I would definitely rather keep your players and go out and get older guys.
I agree. Just like TLC, don't go chasing waterfalls. Stick to the rivers and the lakes that you used to. Play with who you know what they are through and through, good, bad, in between. You know exactly what they are. So I mean, I don't think there's too much to go behind that, because if you go out and experiment, especially with an older guy like Keenan Allen, I mean, how many years does he have left before he wants to go chase a ring? And then on the other side with Samuel, you don't know what that's going to be. And I know if he hits, if the Saints are able to sign him and he hits coming off of that injury, major plus out this world, in all honesty, because of the age that he is and the skill set that he brings to the table. But if he doesn't, I mean, it just is what it is. So I definitely wouldn't pool all of my resources into two what ifs versus the people who I already know.
You think you're Captain Gene from the other guys, huh? Dropping the TLC references. That's ridiculous, man.
Hey, man.
You ever see that movie?
No, but I grew up. I grew up listening to real good music, man.
You gotta check it out. You gotta check it out. The other guys, man.
The other guys. All right, bet. That's another movie on the list of things I need to check out. So, hey, not gonna lie, y'all. If Nick ever gives you a movie suggestion, check it out because he put me on even like a trailer suggestion. He put me onto this new haptic trailer for F1. Changed my life. So
It was a good movie. It was a good movie. It was, I think, some things that could be better, but it's a good watch. It's a good watch for like a June, July movie. Like I think it's a good movie. It's big. Third act, like they kind of get into some tropes and it gets a little cheesy, but it's a good film. It's a good film.
this is the guy who did Top Gun too, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So hey, it's a dude I know who can win already. But
There were a couple things that made me like roll my eyes, but like in general, I enjoyed the movie.
all right, there you go. What out of 100, what do you give it?
83.
I mean, you could live with that. Jawan Johnson, you could live with that.
Yeah, 83. Like it's a good watch. Like it's just not, they got a couple Bulldogs in there though, so I'll give a couple.
Yeah,
I gave
you
like
get
2 points
spotted
for that.
points
So it's
for that.
probably like an 81, but yeah.
That's what's up. All right, guys. Well, look like y'all guys got some homework. That'll do it for this edition of NewOrleans.Football. We'll catch you guys next time.